This is a day that has lived on as one of the most shocking, disturbing, and confusing events in world history, really. Harold Holt took office in January of 1966 as Prime Minister of Australia. But before we really get any further, yes, I understand the title may say President, but there's a lot of younger viewers who may not exactly understand what a Prime Minister is, so I wanted to make sure that this video is understandable by pretty much everybody, but just in case you don't know, Prime Minister, President, basically the same thing. So anyway, Harold took office and was the leader of the Liberal Party at the time. He was loved by most people in Australia at the time and won the election by a landslide. While he made his fair share of mistakes throughout his pretty short time in office, Harold was highly regarded by most people and was supposed to bring Australia into a new, brighter era of political history. But his plans were cut short before he could leave any real lasting impact as Prime Minister. Harold was a fairly private man, and he refused to accept any of the normal security benefits that would typically come along with being a Prime Minister. He only accepted having a single bodyguard after his office window was shot out by a sniper. However, even after accepting the help of just a single bodyguard, he strictly forbade the bodyguard from coming along with him on vacation or any type of holiday away from the office. His wife believes that he did this so he could hide his multiple extramarital affairs. Pretty cold claim to come from your wife. I'm not going to get into all the specifics about that, but it seems like Harold's wife knew he was up to something, and it wasn't good. Getting back to the topic at hand though, Harold loved the outdoors. He spent a lot of time fishing and hanging out by the beach, and he was a very skilled swimmer as well, and only had one major incident on May 25th, 1967. He'd been out with a few friends on a diving expedition when things went terribly wrong, and his friends heard him shouting for help. He was pulled ashore and began to vomit huge amounts of seawater. He said that while diving, his snorkel malfunctioned and it caused him to inhale water. He was quoted as saying, "That's the closest I've ever been to drowning in my life." If only he knew what would await him just a few months later. Harold would wake up on the morning of December 17th, 1967, and he ate breakfast and then called his wife, and they spoke for a short time. He then drove to a local grocery store and bought insect repellent, peanuts, and a couple newspapers. Interestingly, just a week before this, his doctor had ordered him to exert himself less and refrain from swimming or even playing tennis. The headline on one of these newspapers that he picked up read, "Prime Minister advised to swim less." Though that's exactly what Harold planned on doing that day, swimming. Harold made plans with a few of his friends to head to a local beach. They planned on swimming, spearfishing, and having a barbecue cookout around lunchtime. Notably, he never invited his wife to this, and one of the friends that he invited was Marjorie, I think you pronounce her last name Gillespie. This woman was his alleged mistress. So they stayed at the beach for a while, but decided to leave just a short time later because it was super hot outside. While on their way back home, Harold suggested that they stop at another nearby beach for a swim. It was shortly after noon, and Harold wanted to exercise a bit to work up an appetite for lunch. He knew this beach very well, and he'd swum there countless times in the past, but this day would be much different. The water was less than ideal to say the least, but Harold didn't let this deter him. He entered the water along with his friend Stuart, though everybody else knew that the water was far too unsafe to swim. Even though Stuart went in, he stayed close to the shore, but Harold decided to venture out further and just swam towards the ocean. The waves began to get increasingly worse, but Harold just continued swimming. Then, without a moment's notice, one of the waves crashed across Harold and pulled him underwater. His friends immediately lost sight of him, with Marjorie saying that it was like a leaf being taken out, so quick and final. He was never seen again. It only took an hour before news outlets began to cover the story of the missing Prime Minister. A massive search and rescue effort was underway, but there was no sign of him at all. Various crews searched for all hours of the day, up until January 5th, when the effort was eventually just called off. His body was never recovered. Some have suggested that Harold may have taken his own life in a scene that played out eerily similar to one of the final scenes in the book, The Awakening. This is because he may have believed his political career was on the rocks after the Liberal Party had been unsatisfied with how he'd been running the government. He had also recently been prescribed heavy pain medication for a shoulder injury, and it's possible this medication could have clouded his judgment. An official inquiry into his death ruled out this possibility, but some conspiracy theorists are adamant that Harold's final moments tell a story of a man who was deeply depressed and wanted to end his life in the ocean that he loved so dearly. Dozens of other conspiracy theories have popped up over the years, including one that claims the Chinese government had a submarine underwater that captured him as he swam underwater. Others claim that he could have escaped to an underground escape pod or a cave and started a new life far away from the public eye. There isn't any evidence to support any of these theories, but it certainly makes you wonder. The official conclusion is that Harold had been tossed underwater by the sudden current and likely became caught up in kelp that was underwater on the ocean floor. Because of this, he wouldn't have been able to get back to the top of the water, and he would have drowned and then likely been eaten by a shark or some other large animal underneath the water. But there's no evidence for this explanation either, and it doesn't really hold any more weight than some of these conspiracy claims. At the end of the day, no one really knows what happened to Harold Holt. Did he escape to a new country and start a new life with a new lover? Was he captured by the Chinese government? The world may never know. I'm personally a bit torn about this. It seems strange that he would just willingly swim out to sea when the waves were so clearly dangerous. His friends were so scared that they even refused to swim, aside from Stuart, but who really cares about Stuart? I tend to agree with some of the theories that he intentionally took his own life, to be perfectly honest with you. I understand that the medication could have severely clouded his judgment, but having taken painkillers in the past, I can say that I made some questionable decisions while under the influence, but I was never so oblivious to danger that I'd be willing to just swim out to sea in the middle of a raging tide. Let me know what you guys think. Was this suicide, an accident, or maybe even murder? As always, if you guys have any extra information about this case that I may not have covered in this video, be sure to share it with all of us in the comments below. I always do my best to be thorough with my research, but we're all just human, and I'm sure I may have skimmed over a detail or two. But that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to check out the TyNotts merch store. You can get shirts, stickers, phone cases, masks, pillows, and so much more. And I made sure to price everything affordably and really reasonably so that anybody that wants anything can actually afford it. You can help support the channel that way and get some really cool knickknacks in the process. But with that, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you loved it, consider sharing, subscribing, or clicking that blue join button below to support the channel. But I've been TyNotts. You guys have been lovely. I'll catch you in the next video.